Hello again and welcome to the video. So today we've got two locomotives to have a look at, and they're both quite special, I think. They are both from Roco. One is number 33261, the other is 33263, and they're both narrow gauge Austrian steam locomotives. So one is numbered 39904 and the other is 39905. So I think both of these are going to be very similar and also operate on the same railway line in Austria. So we're going to open these very carefully because they were quite expensive and have a look at both of these two and see what they're like and give them a run. So I'll start off with the one that you can actually see through the packaging. Both these boxes are in excellent condition. I don't think these models have been used that much. I did buy them second-hand as normal, but they are in excellent condition by the looks of it through the window. Here you can see that this is number 33263. And it represents the steam locomotive with the number 05 here. And it has these two symbols here, which makes me think that this can be run either on two-rail pickup, normal DC, or perhaps also DCC. So let's open up this box and get this model out. So first out the box is this part here. It's an extra set of number plates that you can add onto here, and also some specification plates as well, I think. The writing on these is very small. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but it's too small here for me to see with a naked eye, so I'm not actually sure what these parts are. We also have these parts which just look like dummy couplings and some vacuum pipes as well. So both of these are unopened from the factory. So here we have the model in the box, and it's held very securely with this nice foam packaging. I can see that there's some instructions underneath this, and they've also included this piece of plastic to help ease the model out of the packaging. So that's really good news because you can see that it has a lot of detail added onto this locomotive, and it has many very small parts here. So let's try and get this out and see what we can do. So let's try and get this out and not break this. So we do have a lot of paperwork in this box. This sheet here is showing all the parts that make up this steam locomotive, and there is an awful lot of them here, as you can see as I move this along here. It also has some circuitry included in the model, and the list continues on the back with even more parts. So this is quite good to show you just how many pieces make up this locomotive, but also if you need to replace any of these, it tells you the part numbers as well. We also have this instruction sheet. Now you can see the number here, 33263, is printed on this sheet. So I'm going to see whether we've got this in the other model when we come to that. But you can also see here that this is in German, English and French. So that's great. And it's quite extensive as well. There's many pages to this booklet, and it goes into a lot of detail about how to maintain this model. Finally, we have the third sheet, this one here, which is talking about the etched labels we just had a look at in the packaging, and it's talking about how to attach these onto the model. And here we see the plates with their locations where they should go. It's also quite nice that Roco have wished us lots of pleasure with your new model. So that's quite nice. Okay, we've got the first steam locomotive out of the packaging. You can see it here. I'm going to take the other one out now. So its box is also in very good condition as well. It doesn't look as though it's been opened before. You can see here 33261 and the same icons as the first one. And you can see here that this is number 4 as well. So let's get this open. So this one also has the extra bag of parts that are unopened, but it doesn't have the etched nameplates here, so possibly they've already been fitted onto this model. So this one also comes with instructions. You can see the number 33261 here. So this is specific for this model as well. It has a warning here in orange printed, but it's only in German, so I don't know what that means. But it does have German, English and French language on this instruction sheet as well. It's not as comprehensive as the other one. There's only 4 pages here, and there's not so many diagrams either. So possibly this is an earlier version of the instructions. It also comes with this instruction sheet, which shows various parts of this locomotive, how to take it apart, and there's further instructions on the back here as well. And it also has a parts number list here as well, and it's 33261 specific to this model, but it does look very similar to the first one. That's unsurprising, and it's got all the part numbers there. So here we are with both locomotives out of the packaging, and wow, don't these look fantastic? Both of them are very, very similar, obviously, but there are some key differences between the two. I'll go into the differences further on in this video, but for now, let's look at the first one at the front here. So this one is number 399.05, and in my mind it's the most attractive out of the two. It's got a lot more colour to it, and it also seems to have a few extra parts as well. It's very delicate, so I'm going to be very careful here when I pick this up. So let's start here at the front of the locomotive, and what a lot of character this model has. It's got these great red handrails here which are very delicate. It has the number there and a light on top, as well as the two lights on either side of the boiler. I'm not sure whether these are lit or not. They do actually look like LEDs. You can see the coupling down here. It's got a bit of articulation there to get around tight corners. Looking here at each of these pistons, there's a lot of detail there, including some rivet detail and extra parts added on. This part sticking out the front here could very easily break off, as could most of this model, so you're going to have to be really careful when handling this. And looking down the side of the boiler, we've got this chimney, which looks as though it's an added on part, but it has that pipe going down to this part on the top of the boiler. The handrail is an extra part that's been added onto this model, and it's very, very fine wire painted in red, and it goes through those plastic brackets on the side of the boiler there. So that's very nicely done. You can also see this great checker plate effect along here, as well as some extra parts that have been added on. It's an incredibly detailed model. For the size of it, it's really quite impressive. You've also got these cables coming down from this part on the top of the boiler. You can see where the gold banding round the boiler goes over those wires. I'm not sure whether that's prototypical or not, whether it does actually go over those cables. I think probably not. You might want to fix that just with a little touch of black paint if you're that bothered about it. But you can see that the gold has been applied very well to those bands around the boiler. And up here you've got some really nice added on parts in metal for these whistles. Further down, the tender is close coupled here, and it does have a fair degree of movement here, and inside you have a very detailed boiler with many extra parts moulded into it, and also some red handrails as well. And you can see the detail up there to the whistle as well on the top of the cab is very, very well done. You can see the number there, 39905, and another lightning bolt further up the cab, and then you can see this panel here which has been added onto the tender. So that does have a bit of shine to it. I guess it's because it's one of the etched parts. So I don't think that's in keeping with the rest of the tender, so I would be thinking about maybe painting that with some matte varnish. And then finally, at the back of the tender, you've got another 3-light arrangement with some red painted on there and some more pipe work and a really nice buffer beam with the coupling here as well. And looking further up, you've got a representation of coal. Now, coal's very difficult to get right in models when it's done in plastic, but this is actually looking quite effective. You've also got this extra handrail gone along here, which is a metal part that's been added on. And finally, the glazing on the cab is very well done. It's almost flush fit, it's very thin, and on the inside it doesn't intrude at all into the cab. You can also see that the inside of the cab has been faithfully painted in that kind of cream fawn colour. So looking down at the running gear, these parts here are so delicate and so tiny, and yet they're all connected up and I guess will all work. We're going to give this a try in a little while. You can see that the first two wheels have flanges, the middle one does not, to help it get round tighter corners. Down here at the tender though, you can see that it has pickup on the two wheels, and it looks as though it has wires there that transmit that power to the motor underneath the locomotive. You can see this white pipe here is attached to the tender, so it does move around a little bit when the model goes round corners, but it's quite nice it's been added on there, and it's quite interesting it's been added on to the tender part. It also has these bars going forward from the tender and they move as well, so it's trying to be faithful to the design while allowing a bit of articulation here, and I think they've done that really well. Detail on the tender includes these tanks here and all the pipe work going to them, and then the bogie underneath has got a lot of detail as well. So here we have the other locomotive. This one is number 39904, and it's very similar to the first one in many ways, but it does have some significant differences, and those differences start at the front of the locomotive. So we saw on the other one that it had a third headlight on the top of the boiler here, which this one does not. And also the other one had some red handrails here, which this one doesn't. So this is a bit of a cleaner front to this locomotive. So looking down the side of this model, obviously it's very similar to the first one, but it doesn't have the gold banding on the ribs around the boiler. You can see it has some more details here printed on the side of the cab, the OBB logo, which wasn't on the first one, and a different arrangement of numbers. And it also has a different location for these numbers on the tender. So I actually think this has been fitted from the factory like this. There wasn't any extra panels to put on in the box, so maybe this one doesn't need it. So at the back here we're seeing a bit of a problem, maybe that this light here is missing something. I don't know whether it's meant to have that in real life or not, but it seems to be missing here. It's possibly just a cover, and I can see something in there, so it maybe still lights up. The other locomotive had 3 of these here, and this one only has 2. So let's give each of these a go on a piece of test track and see how they run. Okay, I've got the locomotive number 4 here on a piece of test track. This is just a piece of old Pico Flexi track that I'm using here, nothing special. Let's give it some power and see what happens. So that was number 4 running on the track there, and it ran amazingly well. You could run it really slowly and it just crawls along nicely, and if you wanted to you could put a bit more power in it and it runs a bit faster. But I'm really impressed with that. It's such a great runner. Let's see if we can get the same results out of number 5, which is on the test track now. So no surprises there, both locomotives ran exactly the same, but both of them ran absolutely perfectly. I'm really impressed with the mechanism, it runs really well, but I noticed on both locomotives that the lights weren't working. I'm not 100% sure these locomotives do have lights, but I'm suspecting if they do, then they only work under DCC. But for us DC users, maybe that's a sacrifice we have to make. So I'm quite curious to see what the mechanism is like with these locomotives, so I'm going to take one of them apart very carefully and we'll have a little look what's inside the body. So I just had a look at the instructions and it seems quite easy to take the body off of the chassis. There's just 2 screws apparently that are holding it on. This one here at the front and there's another one here just tucked behind the decoder. So I'm going to take those off now. So as I took this apart, I can see that this piece here, very delicate, is actually loose, so that must fit into the chassis at one point, so I'm going to have to be careful putting that back together. Looking inside this part, you can see that it's actually made of metal and it adds to the weight of this model. I guess it does need to be metal, but it has had many plastic parts added on. You can now see the detail inside the cab. It's quite extensive. I'm really impressed with that. You can barely see it when the model is together, but here you can see that it has quite a lot of detail and added extra parts inside there. And here we have the chassis with the motor in it. It's a very small motor and it's got a plastic gear here running down to the driving wheels. A little circuit board here, and incredibly it's also got a flywheel on it as well. So I'm really impressed with what is on offer here from Roco. They've really managed to pack a lot into a very small model. I'm now rethinking that it probably doesn't have lights, because looking at these 2 here, there doesn't seem to be any cables running to them at all from anywhere on the model. So maybe these just don't light up. I was probably asking a bit too much of this model to also have lights as well. So now with the model taken apart, we can actually see the back of the cab here where the tender is, and you can see that it has some additional details molded into the plastic there as well. So that's really quite nice. You can also see the glazing on the back there and how it is flush fit and doesn't intrude too much on the rest of the model. So let's try and get this back together and not break anything while we're doing it. Okay, we've got number 4 back together and we didn't manage to break anything either, which is fantastic news. That really was a heart in the mouth kind of moment when I was getting that model apart and putting it back together. It's so delicate, it could have been easily broken, but thankfully I didn't break it at all, so that's great. So let's find out what each of these weigh. So number 4 weighs 140 grams and number 5 is 139 grams. So that's quite interesting because I thought this would weigh more because it has a few extra parts added onto it, but for some reason it actually weighs 1 gram less. Now that I've spent a bit more time with these models, I can see that there's a few differences here and there. For example, the top of the boiler here where the whistles are, one has got rounded edges and the other has got more defined edges. And also number 5 has got these 2 tanks just behind the chimney, whereas number 4 only has 1. So there has been some really great attention to detail when Roco has been making both of these 2 models. And there's also some really nice engineering fixes here. And I can't believe, for example, that this model is also fitted with a flywheel and also has the provision for a fit in DCC. It's quite an incredible achievement that Roco have done to producing this model. And both of these 2 are absolutely fantastic examples of that. If you're modelling Austrian HOE scale, then I think these 2 models would be essential for your layout because they're both so characterful and they've got a lot of interest and a lot of extra detailed parts added onto them. They're both unique in their own way and they've both got their own character. So they would really complement each other if you had both, or just one of them would be enough to really make a difference to your layout. They're very impressive. I think you'll absolutely love these if you got them. The only thing I would say is it would maybe benefit from having a driver and a fireman fitted inside the cab. Now that's going to be quite difficult to do without taking the model apart, just because of the design of them. But having a couple of people in there will really enhance this model. So overall, I think either of these models would make a fantastic addition to your narrow gauge model railway layout. So I would totally recommend that you look these out if you can find them and add them to your collection. So I hope you liked looking at these models as much as I did filming them for you. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of my analysis, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can always subscribe to enjoy more videos like this. I'll put one of these on the turntable so you can see all the way around. But that's it for today. See you next time.